Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. I'm coming at you from another temporary setup today, so bear with me as I wait for my bookshelves to come in eventually. But nonetheless, I have a very exciting book haul. I've definitely been doing some book shopping both on the road and since I have arrived in Austin. I have been perusing many of my favorite used bookstores in the area. That being said, I have so many exciting titles to show off. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first 5 titles, of course, are from Book of the Month for their August selects, and I am partnering with them for this video. If you are not familiar with Book of the Month, they are an online bookish subscription service. Every single month, they curate a selection of 5 titles from a variety of different genres, authors, voices in the community. Their selects are always new releases and always hardcover, and they're delivered right to your door. Not to mention, they also have a huge backlog of books you're able to select from as well. You're able to select one of their monthly titles and 2 additional add-ons. And per usual, if you're not interested in any of their monthly selects, you're able to skip that month with no issue or penalty. I, of course, have an offer code for you guys. If you use the code PERUSEPROJECT, you're able to get your first box for only $9.99. I'm not gonna lie, the selects for the month of August have gotten me so excited, specifically because there are 2 new releases from 2 authors that I personally love so much. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First with The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. I read The Kiss Quotient, also by Helen Huang, earlier this year and absolutely loved it. The characters, the story, the romance, so I'm so looking forward to have her new release on my bookshelf. And this follows our main character, Anna, and she's a violinist. And after she achieves viral overnight success on YouTube for one of her videos, she's beginning to quickly feel a sense of burnout as she's unable to replicate that moment of intense success. Not to mention, her long-term boyfriend has decided that they should have an open relationship before he commits to the final commitment within their relationship. So she decides to have one too and basically have a string of one-night stands until one day she runs into the unexpected motorcycle riding bad boy Kwan, and their one-night stands basically turn into second night stands, third night stands, and basically she begins to be drawn more and more to him. And as these 2 characters begin to be drawn to each other and also beginning to understand each other on an unconditional level, tragedy strikes within Anna's family. This just sounds endearing, full of love and family and relationships, as well as kind of like deciding on possibly a new path for yourself. And this feeling of facing burnout is one I know a lot of people can relate to. I loved The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I found the romance just be absolutely adorable while also being steamy. So I have very high expectations for this new release. And again, I'm thrilled to add it to my bookshelf. The next book you're able to select from also sounds so incredible, full of family and magic and destiny. I truly cannot wait to read it. And that is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. And oh my gosh, this book just sounds like everything I love within magical fantasy stories. And the tagline of this book is, "The stars have shifted, the earth has turned, the time is here. I am dying, come and collect your inheritance." And this follows the Montoyas, and they're used to their life being slightly unusual, and they don't really ask questions about it. Their pantry never seems to run out of food, and the matriarch of the family does not leave the home no matter what. Not for graduations, not for birthdays, not for weddings or baptisms, but when they receive an invitation to Orquídea Divina's funeral, they all attend, hoping to learn some of the secrets that she has been tightly holding on to their whole life, but instead there she transforms into a tree, her roots and branches stretching on beyond herself, leaving the family with more questions than answers. 7 years later, this magic has manifested in gifts in different ways and has touched each member of this family. But soon a hidden figure begins to threaten and tear through this family tree, and now her descendants try to seek out to save it. This just sounds so magical, again combining elements of family, literally manifesting into a family tree. It just sounds lyrical and lovely. I love this author's previous works and their writing, so I feel like this is going to be an absolute knockout, and again, thrilled to have it on my shelf, plus another pink book. It's beautiful. Next select sounds like a dark survivalist style story, which I'm also so into, and that is Once There Were Wolves. And this story follows our main character, Inti, who has recently moved to the Highlands of Scotland with her twin sister Aggie to lead a team of biologists to introduce 14 wolves into the highlands, basically looking to save not only the wolves, but also the degrading landscape. She also hopes this change of scenery will save her sister Aggie as well, as they are also running from some dark secrets and trauma in their previous home in Alaska. As Inti becomes more settled, she starts to see some changes within her sister and also becomes more comfortable at the Scottish Highlands herself, even opening herself up to love. But when a farmer is found dead, she knows that the small town that she lives in will look for someone to blame, and she feels she must protect her wolves at all costs. And when fingers begin to also point at her new lover, she doesn't quite know where to turn. This is said to be dark and spellbinding and perfectly kind of mashing together like humanity and nature and their possible fight with each other, as well as centering a woman and her desperate fight to save the creatures that she loves. I'm just honestly really intrigued by the remote setting of this. It sounds dark and a little bit strange, and I'm looking forward to reading this hopefully in the fall, winter, as I feel like that will have wonderful vibes to match the story. The next option sounds like the perfect whodunit dark thriller, and that is Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina. Brecon Hill in upstate New York is a very expensive place to live. Luckily for Fred and Sheila, they themselves are very, very rich and they have a beautiful and lovely house there. Unfortunately for them, they are murdered the day after an Easter dinner and nobody knows why or how. Or do they? Because Sheila and Fred have 3 children and they are not quite the happy family that they seem, especially given the fact that these 3 children, after the deaths of their parents, stand to inherit millions of dollars. And so begins the mystery of trying to figure out if one of the kids killed their parents or perhaps another figure snuck in during the night and did the deed themselves. But nonetheless, this seems like a wild ride in a classic whodunit style mystery story that I love. This is my favorite kind of thriller, my favorite kind of mystery. Who killed Fred and Sheila? I have no idea, but I'm really looking forward to finding out. And the last novel you're able to pick is Damnation Spring by Ash Davidson. This is said to be a very emotional, family and community-centered story, kind of focusing specifically on one small logging community on the outskirts of the redwoods in California. Specifically, we follow the Gundersons, and for generations, Rich Gunderson's family have been in the logging business. Now, Rich and his wife Colleen are raising their young son in Damnation Cove, which is a swath of ancient redwoods on the rugged coast of California. And here, Rich's employer, Sanderson's Timber Co., plans to make a killing. However, when Rich is presented the opportunity to buy this land for himself, he takes it. He spends his family's entire life savings betting on this land for his future and his growing family, unbeknownst to Colleen. And unbeknownst to Rich, their family isn't actually growing, as Colleen herself is facing lots of unexpected barriers and pregnancies, facing many, many miscarriages. For decades, the herbicides that the loggers have been using have been considered harmless. But as miscarriages and other strokes of bad luck strike the town, like vanishing fish from their rivers and landslides, Colleen's search for answers might not only unravel her husband's plans for this piece of land, but their marriage itself. This is said to be an intimate and compassionate story of a community clinging to a vanishing way of life amid the perils of environmental degradation, and this is said to be a novel of our time. This honestly just sounds like it could be very emotional. I really love family-centered stories, not to mention I've heard really strong early reviews about this particular novel, so I'm really looking forward to adding this to my collection. Alrighty guys, those are the 5 Book of the Month selects for this month. Again, I'll have a link down to their site below, as well as my coupon code. Now let's jump into the rest of the books I've picked up over the last couple of weeks. First, of course, is a pre-order for one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I literally started this book yesterday and I've already read 160 pages. I could not put this book down. So far, this book is living up to all of my expectations and exceeding them. It's just so good. The historical fantasy of my dreams, the lyrical writing, everything. But this is not a review. This is said to be Mulan meets the Song of Achilles, and I can definitely see and appreciate that comparison. We follow our main character Zhu, and essentially she decides to seize her brother's fate. Before her brother's death, her family saw a fortune teller, and basically they told her brother that he was going to live a great life, that he was going to make an impact, versus her fate was nothing. But when her brother unexpectedly dies, she decides to take up the mantle of his life and live it for herself and try to seize a piece of greatness and seize faith in her own name. So we follow Zhu as first she joins a monastery and slowly begins to work her way up in an army during a rebellion against the previous dynasty, and then ultimately in the rise of a new dynasty. Again, I'm about halfway through this book. I'm loving it so much. The historical setting and the writing is truly everything, and also is a multi-POV story, and just overall so amazing. But yes, I pre-ordered, bought this book, thrilled to have it on my shelf. Happy to be here is all I'm trying to say. The next 3 books all go together and all are a part of my quest to complete the purchase of this entire series, and that is 3 titles from the Wheel of Time. I decided in July that I wanted to collect these books in their original hardcover versions. And while I haven't read the books yet, I just feel like they match what I imagine the story is, and it just feels very retro and classic and just the versions I personally want for my shelves. So I've begun to scour used bookstores in hopes of finding these older hardback versions, and so far I have been successful for 3 of them. The first one, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, which is actually the first book, and I am hoping to read this soon, at least the first one, before the new release of the TV series, which is coming out later this year. But this cover is extraordinary. I just love it. I could stare at these all day. I just love like the 80s, 90s vibes. I could have a poster of this on my wall. I just think it's so good. Honestly, I've never actually read the synopsis of this book. I just know it's a classic tale of light versus darkness, and it says, the wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. And it appears we follow our main character Rand within this story as he goes out on a quest to possibly save the day. It feels very, very classic, and I know throughout the entire series you kind of shift through time as well as you follow different characters. And I know the story itself, I believe, has distinct arcs and you follow kind of a variety of different characters, but I feel like they possibly all could be connected in some way, shape, or form. Nonetheless, I'm looking forward to starting this journey very, very soon, and I was able to find the classic hardcover of book 1, and then I also found 2 more. First, I have book 8, so I clearly have kind of a chunk to fill in the middle there, The Paths of Daggers. And I was also able to find Winter's Heart by Robert Jordan, which is book 9. Both of these I was able to score for only $5 a piece, so I feel like that is a pretty good deal. Next book I picked up this month, I won't lie, was completely influenced by Bookstagram. I saw so many different posts about this book, and honestly it sold me, so I decided to buy it. And that is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. In this fantasy world, witches have controlled and maintained the weather for centuries. But their control is faltering as the atmosphere becomes more and more erratic. And all hope has turned to Clara, our main character, who is an Everwitch, and that means she can actually control the weather of all 4 seasons. In autumn, Clara wants nothing to do with her power. It's wild and volatile, not to mention the cost of using her power means that she must lose everyone she loves around her. In winter, the world is on a precipice of disaster. Fires burn, storms rage, and Clara finally accepts that she's the only one who can really make a difference. In spring, Clara falls for Sang, the witch training her. And as control for her magic grows, so does her feelings for him, until she's terrified that Sang will be the next one she loses. In summer, Clara must decide between her power and her happiness. She must decide between her duty, her happiness, the one she loves, before she inevitably loses everything around her. This just sounds really, really interesting. I have a feeling the writing itself is going to be really lovely. I love witch-centered stories, and I think the idea of witches kind of controlling nature and this sort of disaster landscape we find ourselves in just really calls out to me. I also structurally really like how the synopsis was laid out. That sort of drew me in, this sort of season by season breakdown of what's happening in this book. And I won't lie, the actual book itself is truly stunning. I don't know, I've just heard great reviews. Instagram really got me, and I'm looking forward to picking this book up soon. And the very last book I picked up was The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Her. This is the same author who wrote The Silence of Bones, which I read last year and really, really loved, and that is a historical thriller novel set in the Joseon era, and this is a new historical thriller novel set in the Joseon era, and I personally cannot wait. And the tagline of this book is also fantastic. The forest watches me, hostile and still, with remembering eyes. This is set in 1426 26, and Hawani and her family have never been the same since she and her little sister went missing in a forest near their home, only to be discovered later near a gruesome crime scene. Years later, Detective Min, Hawani's father, discovers that 13 more girls have gone missing in this forest that nearly captured his own daughters. He decides to travel to their previous home in Jeju Island, hoping to solve this case once and for all, only to disappear himself. Determined to find her father and try to save these young girls, Hawani also travels back to their old home and hopes to pick up the trail that he left behind. This just sounds so intriguing. Another family-centered historical thriller novel. I loved The Silence of Bones by this author, so I have really high expectations for this as well. I just feel like she was really able to combine so many important historical components while having wonderful, eerie writing and still really capturing you with a intense thriller at the heart of it. Just so many different elements I love within The Silence of Bones. So looking forward to picking this up probably in the fall when I'm kind of wanting something with a bit of a darker atmosphere, but nonetheless, I wanted to add this to my shelf right away. Alrighty guys, that is my book haul. Let me know down below some books you've picked up recently, as I would love to know, and I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!